time to talk about my console launch experiences on this episode of Chris Talks. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Chris Talks. This is the show where I discuss various topics, sometimes ones that are submitted by you, the community, and talk about it. My name is Chris. So today I figured I would do a little talk about my experience with console launches. So I have a pretty solid history when it comes to purchasing consoles at launch. In fact, one of the first consoles I ever purchased was pretty darn close to launch, and that was the Xbox 360 back in 2005. I didn't get it until like a month or two after it came out, but I got it pretty early on and was quite excited about it. It was actually one of the first big purchases I ever made after I got my first job. So that was pretty cool. Of course, I got, a lot of the classics like Oblivion and Perfect Dark Zero. So that was pretty cool. My first official day one console purchase was actually the Nintendo 3DS. Now, looking back at it, it wasn't the greatest pick, especially because at the time it was pretty expensive. But also, it got discounted like a couple months after it came out. Now, I did get the whole Founders purchase thing, so I got some free downloadable games and some discounts on stuff, which that was kind of cool. But I did get a 3DS console at launch. It was the blue teal one. So I liked it. I thought it was a really cool handheld. It was the third DS console I ever owned. The first one I got back in 2007, and it was like a big old fat DS. Later on, I upgraded it to a DS Lite, so that was the third one I ever got. But I liked the 3DS when it first came out. There wasn't a whole lot to play on it. I mean, the only Nintendo published games were like Steel Diver, and I think there was something else. There was one other. Yeah, I don't remember. Star Fox, maybe? There wasn't a whole lot that came out in terms of day one games on the 3DS, but there were a bunch of third-party games. I think the game I got was Dead or Alive Dimensions. And then I played a bunch of the free games and stuff that were loaded onto the DS, the 3DS, as well as, some of the stuff I already owned. So that was kind of cool, but my first actual day one console purchase was the Xbox One. So back in 2013, and there's actually documentation of this if you want to see it. It's kind of far down on the channel, but I was super stoked to pick up the Xbox One when it first came out. Of course, the 360 and the original Xbox kind of won me over, so even though I have stayed mostly console agnostic over the last few years or so, I tend to lean more towards the Xbox just because Xbox Live, and just I enjoy the feel of the controller and the quality of the stuff that Microsoft puts out. So, of course, out of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, I was leaning toward Xbox, so I picked that up on day one. Got the cool black box, the day one edition. Came with the day one achievement, which oddly enough, I don't think is accessible anymore. I actually tried to look on my achievements on my Series X, and it's not even listed anymore. So the main things that you got if you were a day one purchaser of the Xbox One, you got the black box, you got the day one edition controller, which basically it has a chrome D-pad and it said day one edition, or day one 2013 on the middle. And then you got an achievement that was, you just entered a code and it said you had an Xbox One on day one. So kind of cool. The controller is really the only thing I have left from it because the actual system I traded in a few years later because I was also a day one purchaser of the Xbox One X. So I was pretty excited about that because obviously, being a primarily Xbox gamer, I wanted to have the most powerful Xbox I could get. So naturally I wanted to get the Xbox One X, and specifically I wanted the Project Scorpio edition. I originally didn't pre-order it just because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to pull it off. And then on launch day, I called GameStop just to see if they had one, and they did. One available for sale. So I hauled my Xbox One out there in a few games, traded it all in, and picked up my Xbox One X on day one. I was pretty proud of that. It is the Project Scorpio edition, so it's got like that grayscale kind of gradient on the console, and it says Project Scorpio on it. And then of course the controller, it's a black controller that says Project Scorpio on it. Pretty cool. That's one console I plan on keeping for a very long time. One thing I've done pretty badly on in the past is if I get a new console, I tend to trade in the old one, which I mean, that's makes sense if you're not like made of money. But I want to try to not do that quite as much, and with this gen, I'm kind of starting to do that. So I'm keeping my Xbox One X because it's a limited edition, but also, you know, you never know when I might need it, or if I want to play a Kinect game, because that's really all it's good for now, since everything else is playable on the Series X. I also have the Destiny, the Taken King PS4, which of course I had to buy because I was a huge Destiny fan. I still enjoy Destiny a lot. I'm not nearly as big into it as I used to be, but when that limited edition console came out, it was white, it has the Destiny logo on it, it looks dope. I had to have it. So I picked it up. Technically that was a day one, but it was not day one of the PS4, it was day one of that particular PS4. And I still have it, and I'm planning on keeping it. Even when eventually I upgrade to the behemoth that is the PS5. Another day one console that I was able to purchase was the Nintendo Switch. I was pretty excited about that one. There's also documentation of that, so if you ever want to watch my Nintendo Switch launch special, feel free to do so. It's elsewhere on the channel. But I enjoyed the Switch. I think it's a really good console. Obviously, the ability to play either portably or not portably is fantastic. The Pro Controller is really great, and of course, unlike the Wii U, which I got, I think a year after it came out, the Switch has a lot of third-party support, so it's going to remain popular for a long period of time, which is great. So, and then of course my most recent day one purchase, even though I didn't get it on day one, but it counts. I got it on launch week, and it was ordered before day one. Of course, that is the Xbox Series X, which is kind of what this video is inspired by. So I have a pretty good history when it comes to making day one console purchases. And of course, one thing I will always caution people about, because I'm sure you'll see many reports of this over the internet, whenever you are making a day one console purchase, there's always risks involved. Mostly you don't know if there's going to be some sort of hardware failure, you're going to have some kind of technical issue. Any first version of any kind of hardware, there are chances for that to happen. I've gotten pretty lucky for the most part. The only day one console that I've had that flat out failed on me was my Xbox 360. Now granted, a lot of people's Xbox 360s failed on them, but mine did eventually red ring, but it took a little while before it did red ring, so I'm pretty proud of that. I think I ended up on about 5 different Xbox 360s over the years. But so far, none of my other day one consoles have had really any major problems. PS4 is still running great. My original Xbox One before I traded it in was working great. My Xbox One X works great. The Switch still works great. So I've got pretty good amount of hardware that's day one that still works great. And my Xbox Series X is working awesomely. So there's always risks involved when it comes to making a day one console purchase, but if you're willing to take the risk, it can be pretty exciting, especially to be like, yeah, I have the new hotness when it's fresh. So that's kind of part of why I do it, is I enjoy having the new stuff, getting to try it out before a lot of people do, and kind of sharing my thoughts on it. That's part of what I enjoy doing on YouTube as well, is being able to share my thoughts on things. So there you go. That is my kind of history of day one console purchases for this episode of Chris Talks. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. New videos on this channel air every single day. So hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell. That way you know when new videos drop. And I will see you on the next episode of Chris Talks. Bye-bye.